Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans, and I want to say Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a great Christmas and holiday season. And today I want to show you a message from the conference that I did called Signs of the Very End Times. I think this is one of the most significant messages I've ever brought. Some of you may have been at the conference and you heard it. You may have heard it online, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to hear this. Signs of the Very End Times. And you've probably heard me say, I don't believe we're living in the end times. I believe we're living at the end of the end times. And this is something that I'm going to document from Scripture here in this message. So listen to this message and I'll join you at the end. This message is called Signs of the Very End Times. I want to talk about very end time signs. The purpose of signs, there are three basic reasons for signs. One is direction. Am I going the right way? The other is distance. How much farther do I have to go? And the other is danger. Is there some danger that I'm in or would be in if I didn't read this sign? So direction, distance, and danger. This message is about distance, is that we're very close to the end. I believe the signs that we're seeing are telling us we've been in the end for a long time and we're about to see the return of Jesus Christ. So Jesus said in Luke 21, there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity. That means the nations there's no answer for the problems. The sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. Anxiety, depression, suicide are off the charts all over the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when you see these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near. So Jesus was being asked about the signs of the end times. And he gives all those signs there. And he says, when you see these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your head. We've been seeing these things happening for 76 years. The end officially began on May 14th of 1948 when Israel became a nation. You can't have the end times without Israel. And so Israel miraculously was reborn in one day for the second time in May 14th of 1948. So for the last 76 years, we have been seeing signs of the end times. And the signs are becoming a lot closer together and a lot more intense, like birth pains. And so I want to talk about 7 signs of the very end times. How do we know that we're at the very end times? Let me give you 7 signs. Number 1 is the end of a generation. So Jesus said in Matthew 24, again, he was being asked about the end times. Learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branches already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Now, some would argue that he was just talking about the tribulation, that whoever sees the tribulation is going to see all things take place. I believe that what he's saying is the generation that sees the beginning of the end times will see the end of the end times. And there's a corroborating text that's in Joel 3. It says, beginning in Joel 2, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Now, we didn't know what that meant 10 years ago until Mark Biltz discovered the blood moons. And Mark Biltz is an astronomy buff, and he was studying NASA's charts on lunar and solar eclipses. You know, I've never been bored enough to do that. And I've just got to say, you've got to be smart or bored to be able to do that. So he studied NASA's charts of all the eclipses and found out that in 1493 and 4, there were 4 lunar eclipses, blood moons, on Jewish holy days. In 1492 is when the Jews were expelled from Spain. Columbus was a Jew. He came to America to find a place for the Jews. And so in 1949 and 50, there were 4 blood moons. There was also eclipses, solar eclipses in here. 4 more blood moons on Jewish holy days. Of course, Israel became a nation in 1948, set up their government in 1949, 1950. In 1967, 1969, there were 4 blood moons on Jewish holy days and solar eclipses. And that's when the 6-Day War happened, and they took all of Jerusalem back, East Jerusalem back. And then in 2014, 2015, there were 4 more blood moons. And so these are remarkable signs. So what Joel is saying here is before Jesus comes, there's going to be, the moon is going to, it says, the sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. So now we know what that means. It shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said. For behold, in those days and at that time, listen to that sentence. In those days and at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, And I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations, and they've divided up my land. Now this is God in the first person. God in the first person is saying this: in those days and at that same time, when Israel comes back as a nation, I'm bringing all the nations down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's the valley between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives. I'm coming into judgment with all the nations because of the way they've treated my people, my heritage Israel. They've scattered them around the nations, and they've divided up my land. All of those things are happening. All those things have happened. And so I believe that we're living in a generation of the end. So there's a question, and that is, how long is the generation? Now, Genesis 6:3 says that God says, I'm not going to strive with man forever. His days will be 120 years. Now, he wasn't saying that a generation is 120 years. He was speaking to Noah's generation, warning them in 120 years there's going to be a flood. He's saying, this is an evil generation. I'm not striving with you forever. In 120 years, I'm going to flood the earth. And when we know that 120 years wasn't that generation, because Noah was 600 years when he got old when he got on the boat. Methuselah died right before the flood. He was 969 years old. That's old. He'd been on Social Security for 909 years. And so Psalm 90, verse 10 says, the days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength, they're 80 years. Well, the average life expectancy in America right now is 67 years. So I think it's reasonable to say that a generation is 70 to 80 years. It may be a little bit longer than that. And so Israel has been a nation for 76 and a half years. We have 3.5 years to go until they turn 80. And I'm not setting dates. What I am saying is I think that we're at the very end. And I think what we're seeing here, besides what I'm saying here, besides of the math, look at the intensity of what's happening right now. Let me ask you this question. How many times this year did you hear the term World War III? Constantly. Things are just at a fever pitch. And so not just because of the math, but because of the intensity, I just don't think it can keep going on very much longer. The second sign of the very end times is the sign of vexation. 2 Peter 2, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, the preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example to those who would live after them ungodly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked, for that righteous man dwelling among them and seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. It says his soul was vexed. The word vexed there means to subject to severe distress, torture, harass. It just means your heart is breaking when you see the things happening around you. Remember the angels that came to get Lot and his family? The men of Sodom and Gomorrah tried to have sexual relations with the angels. They were so perverted. We live in that kind of a generation, by the way. And so let me say, I want you to experience vexation here for just a minute. And I'm going to say one sentence and you're going to experience it. The opening ceremony at the Olympics. Oh, that's vexation. There you go. You're talking about something the entire world is watching, families are watching, little children are watching, and drag queens become role models. It's the most shocking thing I've ever seen. The drag queens, something that was just unheard of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is now entertainment in the Olympics. It's unbelievable. Anti-Israel demonstrations all over America, the filth coming out of Hollywood, the hate that is everywhere, social media hate, Iran, militant Islam, deception and lies, the war against everything sacred and holy and everything that's attached to the Word of God, the woke campaign in America and around the world, the campaign to kill children in their mother's wombs and to mutilate those that survive. It's unbelievable. And so the vexation, I hear people say this all the time, Jimmy, I just don't know how much longer I can take this. It's just so, my heart just, everything I see, it's just so terrible. Well, let me say this, Jesus is coming soon. That's the good news. That's what that means. And so righteous Lot, his soul was vexed living in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's the way we feel. It's a major end time sign. Is you just sit there and think it just can't get any worse. I never dreamed that we would live in a world like this. When I got saved, David Wilkerson had a message called The Vision. And we were in college and we had this college group and they they played a cassette tape of David Wilkerson's message, The Vision. And we were shocked because he was making all these predictions about how bad things would get. And David Wilkerson said in that message, there'll be R-rated movies on primetime television. And I thought, no way. No way. Oh, we passed that one a long time ago. Revelation 2, to the church at Thyatira, Jesus says, he who overcomes and keeps my works until the end, to him I will give power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. They shall be dashed to pieces like a potter's vessel. Let me tell you some really good news. Jesus is about to come. We're going to marry him. And at the end of the marriage supper of the Lamb, at the end of the tribulation, we're going to return with him at the second coming, and we're going to rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. And there's not going to be any more elections. There's not going to be any more corrupt government. We are going to be ruling and reigning with him with a rod of iron. We're not going to take any lip from people. We will be the co-regents of the earth with Jesus Christ, and there will be righteousness for 1,000 years on this earth. That makes you feel good, doesn't it? And so the vexation that we feel right now, they're going to be feeling later on, not us. Here's the third very end time sign. It's the possible 10th red heifer and the preparation for the third temple. Numbers 19, 1 and 2 said, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, this is the ordinance of the law, which the Lord has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they may bring you a red heifer without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which a yoke has never come. Then Numbers 19:9, then a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and store them outside the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel, for the water of purification is for purifying from sin. So they have to have the ashes of a red heifer, of a perfect red heifer, to be able to cleanse the Temple Mount, the priests, and get ready for a temple. And there has to be a rebuilt temple. Here's what 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 says, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, there doesn't have to be a temple until the middle of the tribulation. Okay, and so the Jews are ready to rebuild the temple in Israel right now. The Temple Institute, I was in the Temple Institute 2 years ago, took a tour of the Temple Institute. They have all the priests trained from the bloodline of Aaron. They have all the priests trained ready for the temple. They have all the priestly garments, musical instruments, instruments for sacrifice and worship in the new temple. When we went into the Temple Institute, they said, all of the things you see here, these are not replicas, these are all kosher. These are the actual garments and musical instruments and everything that will be used in the new temple. They also have the menorah, a solid gold menorah in the Jewish quarter on display in the Jewish quarter in Israel that will go into the new temple. They have the cornerstone ready for the temple. They have the Levitical choir trained and ready for the temple. And we went all through the Temple Institute, and we got to the very last room right before we left, and a curtain parted, and it was an exact replica of the Ark of the Covenant. And they said, this is a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. We know where the real one is, and when the time comes, we're going to go get it. It's on their website. It's on the Temple Institute website. They have priests that have actually seen the Ark of the Covenant. That's the good news, okay? So Indiana Jones doesn't have it. It's in Jerusalem, they believe, and they're going to go get it. So according to the Mishnah, which is the oral tradition, record of the oral tradition of the Jews, there have been 9 red heifers since Moses, and the 10th red heifer will usher in the reign of the Messiah. Well, 2 years ago in September of 2022, 5 red heifers, perfect, were flown from Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, about 5 miles from here, to Jerusalem, to Israel. And those 5 red heifers are still there. 3 have been deemed unclean. 3 have been disqualified. 2 qualified. Now, they came of age last year. When they flew them over there, they were too young to be slaughtered and sacrificed. They're of age right now, and they can be sacrificed and slaughtered. And 2 of them are clean. They only need 1 of them. Here's the problem. So when the red heifers were flown over there, it caused a firestorm, and it was the pretext for the October 7th terrorist attack. This is a Hamas spokesperson, Abu Obaida, and this is a quote from him. The aggression reached its peak against Al-Aqsa with the arrival of the red cows as the implementation of a detestable religious myth intended to aggress the sentiments of an entire nation. And so before October 7th of last year, they could have easily, they have to sacrifice the red heifer in a place that's adjacent to the Temple Mount. It has to be on the Mount of Olives. They have two pieces of land that are adjacent to the Temple Mount. They have to sacrifice the red heifer on one of those pieces of land, and the problem is they're in heavily Arab neighborhoods, and they're open. They can't do it in secret. And so the Jews are smart enough, they're going to figure something out, I can tell you that right now. And the other thing is, I think they probably already have the ashes of red heifer. And I talked to Mondo Gonzalez this week because he's talking to all the people that are over there. They have these red heifers in a visitor center in Shiloh. All someone would have to do is just walk up and throw some bleach on one of them, and they're disqualified. So we don't believe those are the actual red heifers. We think that those are just decoys. We think the real two kosher red heifers are hidden somewhere, possibly already sacrificed. I don't think they're going to advertise the fact that they've got the ashes of a red heifer, because it would cause World War III. And so, but right now, listen to what I'm saying, signs of the very end times. We're waiting for the 10th red heifer. They have to have one. We have 2 kosher red heifers over in Israel right now. They're ready to be sacrificed. They have every single thing necessary to sacrifice them. They're just waiting for a time when it won't cause World War III. Let me say one more thing. When the 2 witnesses show up, they're bulletproof. They can't be killed. If anyone tries to kill them, they're killed in like manner. They call down fire from heaven, all that kind of stuff. When the 2 witnesses show up, they'll say, boys, go get those red heifers and sacrifice them. No one's going to bother you. They'll be able to protect the temple builders and everything. Here's number 4, sign of the very end times. Technological explosion in AI. Daniel 12:4, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So Daniel is an extremely prophetic book, and the angel was saying to Daniel, Daniel, this book won't be understood until the very end times, and you'll know you're in the very end times because knowledge will increase and travel will increase. Well, of course, that's what we've seen. So let me talk about why technology is important for the end times. In 1948, the end could not have come because the technology didn't exist for it to come. Let me give you some examples here. Revelation 11, when they have finished their testimony, they're talking about the 2 witnesses, the beast that comes up from the abyss will wage war against them and conquer them and kill them. Their corpses will lie in the main street of the great city, which has the symbolic name Sodom and Egypt, where indeed their Lord was crucified. Those from every people, tribe, tongue, and nation will gaze on their corpses for 3.5 days, and they will not allow their corpses to be buried. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and be glad and exchange gifts because these 2 prophets tormented the inhabitants of the earth. Wait a minute now. So this is written 1900 years ago. And John is saying here that when the 2 witnesses are killed, this is a 3.5-day event. A 3.5-day event. When the 2 witnesses are killed, the entire earth watches it. Well, that couldn't happen in 1948. That couldn't happen in the year 2000. Couldn't happen in the year 2010. You say, well, they have satellite TV. No. So right now, 6.92 billion people have smartphones. Not telephones, smartphones. For the first time in human history, every human, by the way, 6.92 billion, there are 8 billion people in the world. If you take away the babies and little kids, everybody's got a smartphone. So for the first time in world history, the 2 witnesses are killed, and everyone on earth says, I hate those guys. I'm so glad they're dead. And they start sending gifts to each other when they die. That's how you know you're not liked. When people start sending gifts when you die. So, a preacher in the 1920s said, Jesus can't come until Israel exists as a nation and everyone in the world can see the same thing at the same time. And they thought he was a nut. Can I tell you a little secret? Israel exists and everyone in the world can see the same thing at the same time. In Revelation 11, 1900 years ago, told us the entire world was going to have to see the same thing at the same time. And now we have the technology. Revelation 13, the Antichrist has centralized control over the world's economies. Again, this is the middle of the tribulation. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you take the mark of the beast. In other words, there's centralized control, and it's going to be a cashless society. And so this could never have happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. There was too much cash, and there was not the electronic capability for one person to centrally control all the economies of the world. This is Capital One shopping research. An estimated 69% of Americans use cash for few, if any, purchases over the last 12 months. So 69% of people basically are cashless. In a year, the share of cashless American consumers grows by 13.1%. So every year, 13% of people don't use cash anymore. 63.9% of Americans expect a cashless future. Globally, point-of-sale transactions are 85% cashless in 2024. Trends indicate that 90% of point-of-sale transactions will be cashless by 2028. And so we're moving very quickly toward a cashless society. Again, this doesn't have to be present until the middle of the tribulation. And so right now, we are looking at a cashless world, becoming cashless very soon, and we have right now the capacity for central control of the economy. And AI is making that advance very rapidly. Here's another technological issue. The Antichrist will have supernatural power to deceive the world. 2 Thessalonians 2. The coming of the lawless one, that's the Antichrist, is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. AI is supernatural. The Antichrist is not omniscient, omnipotent, or omnipresent. He has to have technology. When it says here, he comes with all power, signs, and lying wonders, that means supernatural power. The way that the Antichrist is going to deceive the world is going to be supernatural. AI thinks 100,000 times faster than we do. AI was the most significant invention in human history because we're no longer the smartest entity on the earth. AI is. And the number one concern of everyone who invented AI was mass deception. It has the capacity to deceive the world like we've never seen before. And we can pass all the laws we want to here in America. They won't in China, they won't in Russia, they won't in Iran, they won't in North Korea. They will use AI against us all that they can. And the Antichrist will be the ultimate deceiver. So what I'm saying is the technology simply didn't exist in the year 2000 for the end to come. Year 2010. Smartphones came out in 2007. But now we have supercomputers, advanced supercomputers with AI. We have smartphones. Everybody has a smartphone. The technology exists right now for the end to happen and the tribulation to happen. Here's number 5, sign of the very end times, the unfolding Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel 38:39. And Mark Hitchcock on his show last week did a great job talking about how Iran, Russia, and Turkey are coalescing. They're coming very close relationally. In 1948, Russia was one of the first countries to recognize Israel as a nation. Russia had in 1948, there was no Gog-Magog coalition. Russia was very friendly toward them, really until 2022, the Ukrainian war. Turkey established diplomatic relations with Israel in 1949 and had very close relations with them until about the year 2000. When Erdogan became president, their relationship began to deteriorate. Iran was and by the way, Turkey was the first Muslim nation to recognize Israel. Iran was the second Muslim nation to recognize Israel. And they had an extremely close relationship with Israel until 1979 when the Shah of Iran was deposed and Ayatollah Khomeini became the supreme leader. And so today, here's the difference between then and today. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Israel took Ukrainian side and their relationship deteriorated with Russia. Then in October 7th of last year, again, Russia sides with Iran. They side with them and their proxies. And so there was another deterioration in their relationship with Israel. Here's the biggest issue. So Ezekiel 38 is talking about the Gog and Magog war, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and some North African nations. And it says something really crazy. It says that they're invading Israel for booty and plunder. Okay. And what? I mean, forever, people would say, you're coming to Israel for, it's a really tiny little place. They've got some vegetables and stuff. The Dead Sea might be a good thing for you if you want to steal it. They have mass gas deposits off the Mediterranean coast. They are now building a pipeline, and they're going to be Russia's number one competitor in selling natural gas to Europe. Europe hates buying their energy from Russia because Vladimir Putin manipulates them all the time and shuts their gas off. They're going to start buying. Israel is about to become the number one competitor of Russia for natural gas. And they've got something massively valuable for them to come and to take plunder with. And so Russia has turned, President Erdogan of Turkey has threatened to declare war on Israel and invade them. Erdogan likened Netanyahu to Hitler and called Israel a terror state. He's also called for a coalition of Muslim nations to come against Israel. Iran has declared their intentions openly and repeatedly to destroy the nation of Israel. And so in 1948, 1960, 1970, 2000, you didn't have a Gog-Magog coalition. The nations, they just simply weren't together and they just didn't hate Israel. Well, they do now. So Mark Hitchcock on his show last week talked about a report that he had read that's actually on Fox News, that Iran is 1 month away from having 9 nuclear weapons. That they are already enriching uranium at 60%. In the next month, they can start enriching at 90% and have enough nuclear material for 9 weapons. In 2 months, like 12 weapons. In 3 months, like 14 weapons, something like that. Well, I don't know the accuracy of the report, but I can say this. Israel will never in a million years let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And by the way, we need to take up an offering and buy some new pagers for Hezbollah. And when you see all these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your head. Your redemption is drawing near. In other words, we don't get overwhelmed by the things that are happening in the world. Our focus is on Jesus. And that's what Jesus said. Look up, lift up your head, your redemption is drawing near. And I can tell you this, we're closer to the redemption than we were yesterday or this time last year. And this time next year, I hope we're in the presence of Jesus. But if we're not, we're going to be doing His will and going forward with His work. And again, I hope this was a blessing to you today. Thank you for being a part of this ministry, watching this video today. If you want to help us, if you want to support this ministry, just go to endtimes.com and there's a donate button there and you can give a gift. You can give a recurring gift every month. Whatever you give is a blessing to us and helps us to take this message back to you and also to others. This year, 2025, is a year that we're focused on growing this ministry dramatically and reaching more people. Everything you do for us helps us to accomplish that mission. God bless you. Thank you for joining me today.